El objetivo fundamental de esta organización que se llama Asociación Integral de Comerciantes Minoristas Los Ángeles, el objetivo fundamental de esto es lo siguiente. En primer lugar, nosotros, los comerciantes ambulantes que estamos en las calles, no teníamos derecho casi a nada.
The center of all trade in Cochabamba, Bolivia's third largest city. 70% of the city's population works in what is known as the informal economy, which includes taxi drivers, shoe shiners, and street vendors otherwise known as comerciantes ambulantes. Most of these ambulantes spend their days trying to sell in the cancha, the largest open-air market in South America. They invest 50 to 100 bolivianos in merchandise and make about 30 bolivianos a day, at most, the equivalent to about $4.
¿Y a qué hora comienzas y qué hora terminas tu trabajo?
Nosotros 5 de la mañana salimos a agarrar la fruta. Y a la casa llegamos 11 y media.
¿Y dónde?
A las 5 salimos en la mañana a agarrar la fruta. Tenemos que buscar para ganar por lo menos un peso de menos. Y no hay movilidad para llevar, llegamos 11 y media, empezamos a vender hasta 10 de la noche y llegamos 11 de la noche a la casa.
Many of the cancha's vendors work in market stalls which they rent, and some street vendors have legal permits. However, many of the market's ambulantes lack legal representation and in the eyes of the government have no right to sell there. They work in constant fear of police brutality and are frequently harassed by the police officials who patrol the market, in many cases because it is the only way to feed their families. Issues of low income and police brutality are derived from an even larger problem: the ambulantes' lack of basic rights in the eyes of society, and more importantly, in the eyes of the government. For the most part, many ambulantes are not natives to the city. They come from families that once farmed Bolivia's countryside or worked in the mines. During the 20th century, Bolivia began neoliberal reforms to the economy, a move that hurt many farmers and eventually made it impossible to support their families by selling agricultural goods. At the same time, the mines, including the famous silver and tin mines of Oruro and Potosí, began to close, leaving all of the former miners' families without a source of income. As is the case in many Latin American countries, these former farmers and miners are of indigenous descent, and therefore have much darker skin than those of more European descent. This is not always the case, but allows for intense discrimination of both class and race. Latin America is a region that suffers from a great deal of racism. As a result, the indigenous people who move to the more urban areas are treated with disrespect. Some maintain their sense of indigenous identity, but others try to avoid this discrimination by changing their looks to those more in tune with modern styles, rather than holding on to their traditional indigenous dress. While it is common for them to find more working opportunities in the cities, they almost never find the opportunity to work themselves out of poverty. This is in great part because they do not have the same rights or an equal voice in government as do other city residents. They do not have representation within the government, which makes it impossible for them to obtain the resources that they need to better their lives and rise above the poverty that overwhelms them. Most of the ambulantes are too poor to live inside the city or near the market in which they spend most of their time. They settle in severely underdeveloped barrios on the outskirts of Cochabamba. There, basic electricity in one's home is a luxury, as are glass-paned windows, and there is no running water or phone service. The majority of the ambulantes are women and mothers. Many are single with very young children, and therefore the sole providers for their children. There is usually no one else to watch them during the day. Even those who are married are usually forced to take their children along on their long workday or leave them home unattended for many hours at a time. The lack of rights and representation shared by the ambulantes is the ultimate source of their constant struggle. It causes some to feel invisible, caught in a sea of poverty with no one to help pull them out. Some accept their lack of rights because it feels like an obstacle impossible to surpass, but for this man that is not the case. Don Pedro is the president of an organization of illegal ambulantes called the Asociación Integral de Comerciantes Minoristas Los Angeles. The organization unites these underprivileged workers, at this point more than 1,500 of them, to fight for their causes. Their main goals are to be recognized as equal citizens of Cochabamba and of Bolivia, and in turn, to receive attention and aid from the government to better their lives. Specifically, they hope to one day have a market of their own outside the cancha, where they can sell their goods without being harassed by the police or other vendors. However, their most pressing need right now is a guarderia, or a daycare center for their children of the ambulantes.
Casi la mayoría de las afiliadas son mujeres, ¿no? O sea, son de las madres de familia, ¿no? Casi un 80%. Entonces, todas esas señoras que están dedicándose en el negocio de ser ambulante para subsistir en la vida, que hay veces yo en carne propia he visto de que sufren, ¿no? Ellos tienen 3, 4 hijos. Y hay algunos son pequeños, son de 5 años, de 4 años, y ellos, por ejemplo, están junto con sus madres, y hay, por ejemplo, muchas, corre muy peligro en la calle, porque en la calle vendemos ambulando, y ahí viene, por ejemplo, una movilidad, ¿no? En la misma calle circulan las movilidades, hay mucho como pues la inseguridad. Entonces, por esa razón nosotros pedimos que haya una guardería para aquellos niños que están en las calles junto con sus madres, ¿no? Eso es lo que nos preocupa mucho, ¿no? Velando todos los afiliados.
As if the days were not long and hard enough for the ambulantes, the children they carry with them face just as many, if not more, dangers in the cancha. The narrow roads are constantly crowded with cars and buses, and it is not uncommon for small children to be hit by passing vehicles. The traffic that constantly jams the unpaved street pumps out thick fumes that fill the air and make it hard to breathe. There are crowds of people everywhere you turn, and it is easy for a little one to be swept away in the crowd. Additionally, the time these children spend tagging alongside carts in the cancha puts them at a great developmental disadvantage compared to others their age. While most children are learning colors and shapes and the alphabet, they spend the day playing on a street corner trying to stay out of the way. Once they become old enough to go to school during the day, they are already behind their peers. Having their children with them in the market is an immense physical, mental, and emotional stress on the mothers as well. Babies and toddlers are carried on their mothers' backs all day, which greatly contributes to the aches and pains of already working an 18-hour day. Women are faced with the challenge of trying to sell enough to feed their children while at the same time keeping them safe amidst the chaos. Overall, it is a daily struggle. A group of students from Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, has been working with a small group of the ambulantes from Don Pedro's organization to help them achieve their goal of starting a guarderia. We hope to establish a safe place for women to leave their children for at least some portion of the day, where they may receive a snack and participate in basic educational activities. The goal is for the guarderia to be self-sustainable, so that the ambulantes will not be reliant solely upon help from the outside sources. However, they do not currently have sufficient funds to start this project, and so their children remain on the streets. To learn more about the ambulantes and their personal stories, as well as how to help, visit www.losambulantes.com.